Hey there, and welcome to Between the Lines. I'm your host, Chris White, and this is the podcast where we take a look between the lines from the message this past Sunday here at Victory Hill. And this Sunday, we started a brand new series called Hope in the Dark.
Yep.
And Pastor Aaron's here with me today. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a little hiatus. I mean,
I know.
Mike
like
had spoke, and then we had like Easter kind of break, so I haven't been on the podcast in a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be back.
Yeah.
So we had a great Easter.
Mm-hmm,
we didn't get
did.
to talk anything about that, but
22 people gave their life to Christ. Isn't that
people
awesome?
that gave their life to Christ. That's what it's all about right there. More than any other numbers that you'll hear, like that's the most important number, and so that's exciting.
Yeah.
And maybe hopefully some of those who made that commitment have been following along on the podcast or something like that. And so we just shout out to them and just keep going after God, because that's what it's all about. But it's been a good day. Sun's back out again today. It was like cool a couple days, and now the sun's
I was
back
at the
out.
beach last week, so it's a little different.
Yeah. How was the beach?
It was nice. It was nice. Honestly, the temperatures were close to here. It was
Okay.
like in the 80s.
So did you get in the water?
No.
You did not get in the water.
I
So
think
the water was
I got
still
my
cold?
feet in the water.
Yeah.
My kids got in the water,
Yeah.
but
You wouldn't
60
step
degrees.
out into the water. No faith, just to keep going a little deeper, to just
We're
keep
gonna
going.
do that.
Just
Yeah,
like that. You see how that little
okay.
turn, like who was it? John Acuff called us Jesus juice.
Jesus.
Yeah,
exactly.
heard that from him.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there's
that's funny.
definitely like a Jesus juice.
Yeah,
right there.
for
It's,
sure. I set
hardcore.
myself up with that one.
Yeah, you did.
But no,
Softball.
it was the water's too cold for me, but it was nice just to sit around on the beach and relax a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah.
We
Any
enjoyed
good
it.
seafood?
Oh yeah. I go to this place called Provision Company down
Okay.
in Holden Beach. They have the best seafood. I love it. It's a place to go. So,
Yeah, awesome.
My wife's not a seafood fan though, so
How can you live by the ocean?
I know,
grow
like,
up by the ocean and not like seafood.
she just isn't a big fan of it. It's like
That's disappointing. That's
I
very
know.
disappointing.
Yeah, I know. My kids like it though, and I do. So we all eat seafood.
So you make her eat it
She
anyways?
ate chicken tenders.
Wow.
We, like go to the seafood place. Like I want chicken. It's
Yeah.
like okay, whatever.
Yep.
But
Awesome.
hey, so like I said, you took a week off for Easter. Spring break was last week.
Yeah.
So kids were kind of it was 2 weeks ago now, right?
Has it been? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
2
so.
weeks ago. But we figured soccer season's kind of coming into play,
it is
right?
coming into
You've got
play.
2 boys playing
So
soccer,
this is the
right?
first year that we have 2 kids playing soccer, and so they're playing in the Lancaster City leagues or whatever.
Okay.
But it's quickly become difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know how all these families do it when they have multiple kids.
You only have 2 kids.
I
Like,
only
some
have
people
2
have,
kids, and
like,
it's like,
4.
and they're 5 and 7 playing soccer, and so I mean, there's not even that much that goes on. But like,
Yeah.
quickly, it's like practices different nights or the same night, same time, 2 different places, and so it's kind of like all hands on deck, and so that can be challenging sometimes. I'm like, oh, I can't make this one, so who's gonna fill in here or whatever. So, so it could be a long season. I mean, like it very well could be a very long season.
Have they started games yet? Or are they just in practice mode? yet?
Tonight is game night for
Oh,
Jackson.
okay.
So Jackson,
All right.
this is his first year playing. I think the verdict's still out whether he likes it or not.
Okay.
They practiced in the rain the other night, and as soon as it started raining, he's like coming over and going,
I'm done.
"Do we go home?" And we're like, "No, you keep practicing." And he's like giving us this weird look, like almost about ready to like this is why would I keep practicing in the rain, So
That was me the first time it snowed here, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Do we go to work?"
Yeah,
and you
right.
were like,
yeah,
"Yeah,
do we get out of our
work."
house, Like, do we all just stay in today, But but it seems like he's enjoying it or whatever. Landon's excited about the season or whatever. So hopefully it's a good season. But it's like, I mean, like even at that age, it's still like games like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
I know.
So
It just gets worse as they get older.
You know,
It's just like,
I keep
worse,
hearing,
better. I don't know what you
I
say,
keep
but
hearing
like-
that, and so so I mean, if anybody has any tips out there
Yeah,
that are
drop-
listening, I mean,
yeah.
drop them in the comments. Let us know. Send me an email. Say your life's over
We're
for the next like
praying for you,
18 years
Pastor.
or
Yeah,
whatever,
that's what I was
or whatever that looks like. But any tips would be great because
Yeah.
I'm just going, how are we going to do this? So
Now you play. I know you've told us this before, but you've played soccer.
Yeah.
In college, right?
Yep.
And high school.
correct.
Okay, what position did you play? And then I'm gonna go ahead and ask. Like, you're gonna have to explain the position to me because
Yeah.
I really have no idea
Yeah.
what soccer. I know you like kick a ball from like one goal to the other.
I mean
but,
that
like,
is the goal of the whole thing, I mean, at least if you have that concept, you're halfway.
I wasn't
there
like
or
you throw a
whatever.
ball. No,
Yeah,
it's
at
like-
least we got the right type of
Okay.
soccer, like right type of football.
Yeah,
as they would
exactly.
say over there. So I played like midfield.
Okay.
And so the midfielders are the individuals that will play both offense and defense. So they're really the ones that they make run the whole time.
I was
And
gonna
so
say,
yeah, so like,
it's like-
if you get to play defense, like you don't have to run all the time. If you get to play offense, like you but the midfield, according to what kind of formation, you might have 4 or 5 midfielders. Is you run back and forth, and so you're supposed to be on both sides of it. And so in high school, when I was actually in shape, I could run really long distances and not get tired. Now I can't even like run around the block.
I ask you, like, are you like a runner now?
No, like I couldn't even get around a block now. But like in high school, like I mean, I could consistently do several miles at like I mean, I could at least do. I just remember it because it was our time. I could do at least 2 miles in under 12. And so like that was like a requirement of like.
I might could do a mile in under 12 now.
Like I can't even run I can't even run like 1 mile under 12 minutes right now. Like I mean, it's
something was chasing me.
It's horrible. Like we were doing something not too long. I did an egg hunt.
Okay. Yeah,
and it was like an egg hunt, and like we get done. I mean, literally like a 45-second egg hunt by the time all the eggs, and like I'm breathing heavy,
winded.
I'm like, ooh,
that's me when I play basketball with Jake. It's like we're like 5-10 minutes into it. I was like, I think we're just playing 10 instead of playing.
It's shameful, like I'm not gonna lie right now. Like it's pretty shameful. That's where I'm at. But yeah, so that I played soccer then. I was in much better shape back then, a lot lighter back then, but I enjoyed it. And yeah, I was the crazy guy that was like, yeah, I'll run both on both sides. Isn't it fun? I get to play both, and
nice.
I should have just played offense or something. That
never intrigued. Soccer never intrigued me as a sport because of the fact it was always running. I was like, there was no break. Like for a long time, you're just going back and forth. I was like, I don't know.
Like Landon plays on these like small fields, but he's kind of started figuring out like when you play at those age, you're like back and forth. It's like a big like mob just kind of moving or whatever. So he now likes to stand outside the mob over by the offense. So he definitely likes the offensive side better. And I think he's like, I can score goals and not have to run back.
He's got to figure it out. Let them do the work, and then
it really is. I'm like, bud, you can't do that. So we're working on that.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Hey, Sunday we launched this brand new series. It's called Hope in the Dark. I think it's going to be an awesome series. It's been amazing. Already hearing stories of people who are just connecting with it. And so if you could just for a minute kind of talk to us about the premise of the series and like what we're talking about and kind of where it kind of came out of. And stuff too.
So the series is called Hope in the Dark, believing God is good when life is not. And I mean, just a couple where places like where this is kind of coming out of as far as that goes is one, just understanding and sitting with a lot of families, individuals who have gone through some just difficult seasons, and even coming out of COVID, some of the difficulties that people have gone through, loss, heartache, brokenness. I say unfortunately because I never want to see anybody hurt. Part of what we do as ministers is a lot of times we're with families in some of those dark moments when there's loss and heartache and hardships. And I guess just, one, hearing people what they're walking through, what are some of the situations they're going through, and how do we find hope in the midst of it. And so the series is actually, I'd say it's based on two things. It's based on the book of Habakkuk first and foremost. And so Habakkuk is an Old Testament minor prophet, and it's based kind of on his story of what was going on in the nation of Judah. He's a prophet, and he's coming to God, and he's kind of pouring out his heart because he doesn't like what God is up to. And so I think he's this very relatable person because there's a lot of times in our life we don't like what God is up to. And then it's also based on a book entitled Hope in the Dark by Craig Rochelle in Life Church. And so we're kind of using some of their framework to kind of walk and navigate through it. But I just think there's so much that we need to understand that when we walk through difficult times, like what do we do through them, and how do we still hold on to hope even though we may not quite understand it. And I love the tagline, it believing God is good when life is not. And I think there's just so many of us that's where we're at. Like, God, I know you're good, but man, right now life is not good, And so how do we hold on to faith? How do we walk through with faith? And what do we do in the middle of all those storms?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, like growing up in church, like there was this weird, like, concept I kind of felt, I don't know if it's ever verbally told to me, but just kind of this understood of like, if your life wasn't going good, something is wrong. Like, you know what I mean? And like, there was this kind of, and so there would be many times you go through stuff and like, you'd be looking at your life, like, what did I do? And I think sometimes life is it's just hard. Like God never promised life was always going to be easy. And I think for me, a big step in faith and growing in faith was understanding that the faith that you find in those moments. You know what I mean? And I know that's kind of what the premise of this whole series is.
It is, and I think it's such an important thing. I think there's things that we pick up, especially, maybe talking to people who've been in church or grown up in church now. I think there's things that we pick up that sometimes maybe wasn't necessarily taught that way. I'm not saying that's what's like a teaching inside the church, but it becomes assumed, and we start walking those things out. Like, hey, I can't let my faith ever be shaken, and I've got to be steadfast in all of these moments. And even when we walk through some difficult times, I mean, like that's just, we always thought we had to put on that face in the front. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. And, hopefully as we continue to walk through the series, we learn how to kind of labor with, some of the difficult things that we go through in life.
So true. You talked about, so you said this whole thing's about the story of Habakkuk, which if you've ever read or you haven't, it's not like a fairy tale story. Like you mentioned this on Sunday. It's not like a happy ending at the end type of thing. And he's witnessing the destruction of Judah, like all of this kind of process. And he's asking God, he's not happy with God because God's allowing this to happen. Right. And so you taught us that this shows us that it's okay to question God. So let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this is like an initial step for all of us to understand.
Yeah, and I mean, we pose the question, is it a covered question God, and yet we look at scripture and we see individuals over and over again who kind of are going to God in the same situation like Habakkuk is, like going, God, what are you doing? I mean, for Habakkuk, he's going, I thought we were like your chosen people. I thought this was, your nation. I thought we were supposed to be these people. And it's like, you're bringing destruction. You're going to allow, I mean, we even see in there where he's like, I'm going to allow your enemy to come and conquer you. And it's like, well, God, you could do something about it. Like you're telling me you're going to allow this to happen, And so can we question God in those moments? God, what are you up to? What are you doing? We see it in the life of David, who's just real and raw. We see it in the book of Lamentations, Ezekiel. We see it in the life of Jeremiah. We see it with Job. And we see time and time again individuals who are kind of questioning God, Even just Sunday after church, I had an individual kind of walk up and they're like, man, that was for me. Like I've grown up and thought if I ever asked the question, God, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing this to happen? It meant that I didn't have faith in God. And it meant that my relationship, something was wrong with my relationship with God, because I'm just supposed to be steadfast, to always, go, God, I don't have any questions about it. I'm just fully there. And I think there's this part of us that a lot of people find themselves in that place. It's like, okay, can't ever question this, and it doesn't mean that you don't have faith still, and if we actually see in the Bible when he talks about it, he said, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, so I can question and still have faith. Maybe it doesn't feel like it's a lot of faith, but he said all you need is a little bit of faith, a little bit of that in your life. And so I think it's so important that we understand that, there's going to be times we're just going to go, God, I don't get why this is going on and why you've allowed this to happen, and it's a place that we have to get to, that we're going, okay, God, it's okay to question in those moments.
I was listening to a pastor this past week. We were down on vacation, and the local news station was interviewing him about COVID. And they were asking, his name's Mike Ashcraft. He's a pastor of a church down at Port City Church in Wilmington. And he said this, they asked him, has your faith been shaken during COVID? And his response just kind of like, it hit me, and you're talking about this. He said, my faith in God isn't shaken. He said, because my faith in God is constant. Yeah. But I definitely have asked the question, why? Yeah. Like, why is this happening? I think that's the thing, is like, it's not that your faith in God is shaken. It's you need the answers of like why. And I think he's okay with that, you know? And I
think he would rather us do that. Yeah. I think he'd rather us pour out our hearts, because when we talk about this, I mean, here's the other side of it. We talk about this relationship with God, that it's a personal relationship. So, we question each other in this natural world. And so I think God like expects it at some point, because he wants to be close to us, and the way that he's developed this relationship, I think he gives us plenty of space to sometimes just to go to him and go, God, I don't understand this, and I think when we ask some of those questions, sometimes he may show us, and I think we see that a little bit in the book of Habakkuk, like Habakkuk's like, I don't understand this. Why are you doing this? And he goes, here's why. Yeah. I'm going to tell you why, and you're still not going to like it, but here's why this is happening.
Yeah. So true. You talked about the idea of a crisis of belief with God, where we find ourselves in a valley type of moment in our life, and we have to make a decision of what to do next. And you kind of showed us a little graph of like going up and coming down to this moment, and you're in this little curve here. You said we can either deny and pretend that everything's okay, deny that there's an issue at all, or we abandon him, we abandon God, and we just, give up. And I've seen so many people do that. But then you talked about a third way. You talked about wrestling and embracing, which is actually the definition of like Habakkuk's name, which I think is really awesome. So let's talk about that for a little bit, what it means to wrestle and embrace, because I think this is the decision we ultimately need to make in that moment.
Yeah, and I think, and if people are listening and they, didn't hear the sermon, I would encourage you to kind of go on and see a little bit of that diagram. But the story of people of faith is, we have an encounter with God. And when we have those encounters with God, like, I mean, when you first come to faith, I mean, it's like your life just kind of shoots off. It's like a rocket, and we find ourselves on mountaintops. we life happens, we start going down on those moments, and when we get to that place, there's this intersection of what do we do here. And I think a lot of people in the church, that's where we're at. Like we deny there's any problems, and we try to make the perception that we are on the mountaintop. Like okay, because I have faith, like man, this is gonna happen. This is gonna always be the case or whatever. And I, I'm all for faith. I'm all for speaking life over things and all those kinds of things. But life happens, and we can't just necessarily deny like this is a problem that's going on. But yet far too many people, and I think probably more than what we realize, is probably a little bit of their story. Like, hey, I came to church, I went there, I had a crisis of belief, and man, something didn't match up. Like what I heard about God or who I thought God was didn't match what they saw with their eyes. And so they're just like, you know what? Then there just must not be a God at all. And they abandon faith altogether. Yep. And if those are our only two options, we are there people that become very fake, and we're always pretending that everything's good and great in life, or we're walking away from faith. And so that third option is to do exactly what Habakkuk's name means. It is to wrestle and embrace, to go, I got questions, and sometimes I don't have the answers to these questions, and I'm struggling with these things, but at the same time, I still have faith because I'm embracing that God is good, that God is sovereign, that God is loving, that, he is just, that eventually, his will is going to be done in this world, that I'm fully surrendered to that. And so God, I'm embracing everything I know to be true about you. And that's where that faith comes in, like God, I'm embracing. But man, I am wrestling because, I don't understand why my child's sick. I don't understand why I lost this job. I don't understand why we can't have a child. I don't understand why we lost our home or foreclosure happening or bankruptcy was the choice. God, I don't understand those things when I've been faithful to you. I don't understand those things when I've been living by your principle. And so God, I'm wrestling and I'm embracing at the same moment. And when we do that, I think God shows up in a way that we could never experience before. And so, it's this relationship side of it where we're on these mountaintops, we're in these valleys. And then we talked about James talking about, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds. You're like, we don't love that passage of scripture, right? Like that's like, can we
avoid that one?
Can we rip that page out of James? Because like, consider it pure joy. I don't know about you, but I've never been just like, whoo, I'm so excited, man. Like, hey, my child's sick, or hey, I don't know where I'm going to pay the bills at today, or hey, I just lost a job. Like, I'm never just like, man, this is so awesome. That's great, And that consider it pure joy isn't going, hey, I'm trying to live on the mountaintops. Oh God, that's great, man. I'm glad. Thanks for letting me go through this. But consider it pure joy, my brother and sister, when you face trials of many kinds, because in those moments, I'm producing something in you. And when you allow that to fully go through the process, then there's something on the backside of it, And those is really how we walk it out. And so we wrestle and we embrace, and we're gonna wrestle and embrace through a whole season where we go, I don't quite understand it, but maybe on the backside you're gonna go, okay, God, I didn't even like that season, and I'm still struggling with that, but God, I knew you're present and that you were with me in the midst of that.
Yeah, so good. I think just the understanding. I think for a lot of us that we need to be in this place where it's okay to wrestle with stuff. It's okay to embrace it and say, okay, I know it's happening, and to wrestle with it. God doesn't want us to cover it up. He doesn't want us to act like we are okay with everything. I think if we're created in the image of God and things bother us, they bother God too. And I think it's okay, you know what I mean, to have those conversations with him.
It is completely okay. And I think it's there that we really get to know who God is, because I think there it becomes personal, and I think when we talk about in the church that he wants a personal relationship with us, he doesn't want a fake relationship with us. He wants it to be personal. And that personal side of it, when you labor and you wrestle with some of those difficult things in life, you see relationships grow, and what we do in those moments. And I think that's why it's so key. Like when I draw that, think about it just in a personal side. I mean, whether it's a husband and a wife, like when crisis hits, how you walk in that crisis probably determines what the strength of your relationship is going to be on the backside of it. Some people get into those places, and even as a married couple, and they're like, hey, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to abandon. Some then just fake it. And their marriage never goes anywhere else, and they're like, oh, we're great, we're good, there's nothing wrong with this, and they're just kind of going through the motions. Some labor through it. Some go through difficult conversations. Some get through those moments where they're like, man, we're working through this. And so if it works in a spouse and a husband and a wife relationship, the same is true with God, because he said, I want a personal relationship with you. I don't want something fake, and I don't want you to abandon. I want you to wrestle with me. And on the backside of this, we're going to be stronger if we go through this process together, And so I even said Sunday, God understands your pain and he welcomes your questions. He gets us. it's not that he doesn't see it, and he welcomes the questions that you have for it. We just got to get to this place where we're going to go, I may not even like your answers, God, but I'm going to wrestle, I'm going to embrace.
So good. I love this quote that you said on Sunday. You said that the way to true intimacy with God is not to live on the mountaintop, but to get to know his faithfulness in the valley. I know in my life, this has been so true. It's in those, valley moments. I think I texted you something on Sunday about like in those, like I saw it when you kind of drew this curve, there's this V that kind of shows up in there. And that in these valley moments, right, is really, that's where the victory is found. A lot of times we think we found victory on the mountaintop, but I think so many times it's in those moments we're in the valley where we realize, you know what, this is the faithfulness of God through this.
And you don't see him in the moment, and I'm not, I don't, maybe you are better. Like I want to be better at it. So I'm just real on that side of it. There is something amazing about journaling. Are you good at journaling?
Not as consistent as I want to be.
Yes. So like I'm in the same boat with you. I have different seasons of life where I've gotten some journals going, and stuff like that. I've never probably been as disciplined in it as like I want to be. But man, there's something powerful about it because when you journal, you then see valleys in those victories. You see the valley moments in God's faithfulness, and through that you begin to develop intimacy. And as I told the church Sunday when I took over as lead pastor, I have one from like a couple months before, like into the process. It's not crazy consistent. Sometimes it's been 26 months. I might only have like 12 or 13 entries, but I'm reading through these entries the other day, and and I'm just going, God, that was hard. Like I didn't think I signed up for this, but man, it's in that I was like, but I developed more intimacy with you in that, and I developed more relationship with you in that season than I did when we was like, man, when I'm like writing posts where it's like, man, I'm celebrating this. Look what God did. God, you're so awesome or whatever. Man, it was in those hard moments that I'm like, wow, God, I can look back now and go, wow, you were so faithful to me because that could have been bad. That was difficult. That I didn't ask for. And God, you just walked us through that, and you were with me in the valleys and you brought me back out of it. And in that you produced something in me.
Yes.
And so when I look back and read those things, I'm like, God, there's where intimacy grew. And now I know that in those valleys he's with me. And so now I bank on it, on the sense of going, God, I don't see it with my eyes right now, but God, I'm embracing who you are because man, you were faithful so many times over and over and over again to me.
Yeah, we've went through things in our family and people will ask us and they'll just like, how do you maintain like your faithfulness in this? And it's always been this to me. It's like, I've seen God be faithful in every moment of my life. And in the middle of the moment, I probably was having a hard time seeing the faithfulness, but I knew he was faithful. But what it's produced is this knowledge of, you know what? I don't understand it, but I know that he's going to be faithful in it because he's always been faithful. That's who he is. We talk about the characteristics of people. That's the characteristics of God is that he is faithful. And so you learn to trust that. And I think that's so powerful inside of that.
No doubt.
Anything else that stuck out to you from this past weekend that you just want people to kind of know?
I just want to encourage people to, to lean in over the next several weeks or whatever, whatever season you're in, there is hope on the other side of it. I told people Sunday, this is not a sitcom sermon. It doesn't always wrap up nice and pretty, but that mirrors life. Like life is not always that. But man, there's hope in the darkness, and even in the middle of those difficult times, man, we can hold on to who God is. And so I just want to encourage you, man. If you weren't here Sunday, get here this Sunday. Maybe you need to bring some people with you. Maybe there's some people that you go, man, I know they're hurting. I know they're going through a difficult season, man. This series is going to be for them. We got some powerful stories we're going to be sharing throughout it, and so you don't want to miss any week of it.
That's right. And thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Pastor Aaron. Be sure to check out last week's message on YouTube. Be sure to check out our podcast. Continue to like, subscribe, share with everybody that you know. And we'll see you right back here next week for Between the Lines.